is up, everybody? This is Johnny Langford with the Savage Podcast. I'm here with the man, Adam Rorda. Say hello.
Hey, boys and girls. How's it going?
All right. So we are going to talk about the 5-hour rule today. So if you're following me on Instagram, I'm going to go ahead and send you the podcast information. We're going to put this in the storyline and we're going to move on. So, Adam, what does a 5-hour rule mean to you?
Well, I mean, just straight up, it's pretty simple. It's all about learning. They say these are the three things you want to focus on 5 hours a week. Some time in reading, some time in reflecting, sitting back meditating, figuring things out, and then some time experimenting, which reflecting can kind of coincide with the experimenting a little bit as well. So focusing on those three things is really important in all of your endeavors, and no matter what you're doing. But for entrepreneurs, I find this to be one of the single most important things that needs to be done that most people leave out.
I think that's going to give me like good leeway into what I'm going to talk about today. So I have 3 books that I want to recommend for anybody.
I've got 3 also.
See, so we're off to a good start. We're going to talk about reading. We'll jump into reading. And I'm going to save my 3rd book before we jump into the meditation part of this. So I think it's really important. Before we relaunch the Savage Podcast, I brung in a person that actually talked about like mental health and how important it is. And even though she was more, Ms. Ann was more about the spiritual side of mental health, I also want to talk about how much meditation, if you're spiritual or not, really does help. It kind of helps you self-reflect in doing all that. But jumping into this, what is one of the books you have before I start reaching down into the corner of the abyss?
One of my absolute favorites. I think if you're getting into business and entrepreneurship, there's one person that we all kind of look up to, not necessarily in his personal life. Actually, in his personal life, I'd say stray away from that. But Steve Jobs, and a book called How to Think Like Steve Jobs. It's an excellent read. It's more about, when you destroy your blueprints and start over with something new. When do you move forward with the pitch, and how do you pitch a new product to not just your clients but your investors and other people, and those were the things that he was probably most famous for besides the actual design and user interface, but that's talked about in the book. So it just gives you a nice solid grounding in understanding the major aspects of what made Steve Jobs and how you can kind of do the same thing. So I think it's a really important book to kind of get under your belt. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorites.
All right, let me reach down here into the abyss.
You've got one coming along.
Up. All right, I am a fanboy beyond belief, but don't judge me. Gary Vee's Crushing It. That is my number 1 book for go-to online entrepreneurs. If you get into drop shipping or you get into social media marketing, like whatever your niche is, this is a book that I think goes beyond anybody else. And Gary Vee even tells people when I've read this, and I also listened to the audio file for it, and he also talks about in the audio file, because he's doing what Gary Vee does, he paused in the reading of it and said, I don't care if you have to download this off torrents or whatever you want to do, get this in somebody's hands. Gary Vee, as of 2017-18, he's worth $160 million alone. So I think he was
only worth like $10 million like 5 years ago, something like that. He's really jumped up in his net worth.
His ultimate goal is to own the New York Jets, but that's besides the point. Read this book if you need some kind of insider tips on what to do. And he claims in this book he's not trying to make you a millionaire, and that's what I like about stuff like this, like books like that with Steve Jobs. And this is not saying it's going to make you a millionaire. What they do say though is when you get on this entrepreneur grind, that you should totally focus on a goal, and that goal can lead you to millions, or it can lead you to self-innovation to help yourself make enough money to be comfortable and call your own shots. And I like that better than Ty Lopez saying, hey, listen to me and I'm going to give you like millions of dollars. I don't.
So
like,
tell us a little more about that book. I mean, other than Gary Vee and his general experiences and stuff like that, what is Crushing It
so
really about?
It sets out the current landscape of like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and Musically and a couple other apps, and it tells you about how to navigate some of these online marketing strategies and how you can do it. It talks about a woman here who actually did social media marketing, and she started off having a day job, and she was really good at her day job, but she didn't really want to do it, and she ended up talking to a company and said, hey, if I do 2 weeks for free or a couple months for free of your social media marketing, and I change your perspective on something, maybe you can start paying me to do this. And I do believe in the entrepreneur world. So I don't completely always believe something is free, but if you have the talent and you need to make a name for yourself, if you can find a small company you can help and say, hey, you know, if you have a day job and you're trying to do this on the side and you need to test the waters, then do something like that. That's a good way to find yourself. Now, I'm not saying waste your talents, but then again, if you've never done it and you've never built a portfolio, you have to start somewhere, right?
Oh, definitely. Okay, well, probably the next book on my list, I'm going to go ahead and share this one, but I hold this one near and dear because I think as entrepreneurs, we all sit back and have these moments where we lose our mojo, we lose our energies with everything that's going on. We all lose the creative juices. We all lose absolutely any desire to kind of push forward. And one of the most important things as an entrepreneur is to just crawl forward. If that's all you can do is crawl, you need to find a way to do that. Well, anyways, there's this book right here, Mojo: How to Get It, How to Keep It, and How to Get It Back If You Lose It. One of the most amazing and most insightful books on how to defeat that. We spoke about it last week. The societal. I'm sorry.
Social constructs.
The social constructs and societal constructs. How to break those down. And first place you start is at home, and that's exactly what this book is about. Whether you're talking creatively, whether you're talking professionally, we all lose that desire to kind of push forward because things get real tough as entrepreneurs and business people at times. But this book is just so amazing at breaking it down. Marshall Goldsmith and Mark Reeder are the writers of this book, and they just do an amazing job of breaking down the process and how you can push forward and get your mojo back.
All right, so my next book, I've gotten through about 2 paragraphs on here, but it was something that I think everybody should tap into. It's called Shortcut Your Startup, and so it's by Courtney Ream and his brother Carter Ream, and even Tony Robbins. Sorry, didn't get that in focus. Even Tony Robbins is a big fan of them and read through this book. It's more of a motivational piece for me as getting into it so far. I can't really give a good perspective on it, but I think if people have also done their own business and created their own business, and you can find some strategies like I want to see in here, something I do want to see is like showing someone how to open an LLC or how to invest your money and how to build some type of profits, learning about like ROIs, learning about projects and loss statements, learning about overhead, like stuff that you should know before you jump into a company. If we're saying, hey, I want to start a company, I would recommend at least the first 2 paragraphs of this. I've been through the first 2 chapters. I want to see more of this, so I'm putting it kind of in the realm of what you should know. I read some stupid books. Some other ones that I've read is like macroeconomics and microeconomics, and learning how to do those, and I have those in my book collection too. So these are books that this is the new one that I'm working on. What's your next one?
Well, actually, I've got 2 wrapped up into one. Last week, I did that on accident and wrapped the titles up when we were talking about this, John, interestingly enough. But this is going to be 2 wrapped up in one because it's the same concept, and it's about goal building and goal setting, how to do it the right way so that you have your time structured out appropriately. So it's the 4-hour work week is what I meant to talk about last week, but actually at the same time I was still thinking, and more importantly thinking of the 12-week year. It is a an amazing book that can help you just lay out your year with goal setting, and literally what takes most people a year to get anything done. When you use this, you literally will see a drastic change. Within 12 weeks, you'll get done what most people get done in a year. It's amazing. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to go out and get this book as an entrepreneur, so that way you can keep going. You combine that book with the other one that I just showed you, you're going to be able to just kill it. You'll be rocking it. There's nobody that will be able to keep up with you. People will be wondering how you're operating 4 businesses, 5 businesses, 8 streams of income. How are you doing it? Well, the 12-week year is how I do it, and I highly suggest that you go ahead, at least download a copy online. It does cost something, but there is a course that goes along with it if you want to. It's not really an MLM scheme or anything like that. This guy legitimately is a business coach and helps you get a lot more stuff done. He's hired by some of the top people, top companies across the globe to go ahead and work with them. Brian Moran is. So check it out. Read it. Tell me what you think of it. Tell us what you think of all these books. But the 4-Hour Workweek is probably a little more famous. I think it was Rich Dad Poor Dad was really pushing the 4-Hour Workweek. But the 12-week year, I personally feel, is a little more practical.
All right, so if this is kind of going to lead on to the mental health idea. So these are 8 habits of the heart. This has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. I'm going to say that right off the bat. But what this does have to do, excuse the popping.
Has a little green on it. Hold it in front of yourself so that way people can see
it has a there we go. Sorry, forget where.
Well, if you put your hand, you'll be fine.
There we go. So basically, when I was going through this book, The 8 Habits of the Heart, I was thinking about different types of relationship building that we can do. So this talks about building strong families and communities, and kind of put down the title shortly at the top. But if you can build communities and families around you, if you can build a connection with somebody, that's the most important thing you do in business, right? As a salesperson, as a person that's trying to get an investment, somebody that's trying to talk to people in general and networking, that is one of the best things you can do as an entrepreneur to build yourself. You can't always just be in a closet with your ideas and not try to stretch out and reach out to talk to somebody, because if you reach out and talk to someone, you want to find some common ground with that person. I think that's a very good way to start a networking event, and I think by doing something like this, like reading this book, I think it can really help you. And how that leads into mental health is if you build more connections with like-minded individuals and they're actually think your ideas are good or bad and give you constructive criticism and actually talk to you in a manner that is building you up instead of tearing you down, and you put yourself around the right individuals and use these 8 habits of the heart to actually talk to people and actually get to know people, I think it really helps. Now, I think it mentions God in here a couple times, but with that being said, I mean, it's your preference if you believe in God or not. I mean, personally, I'm atheist, but when it comes down to it, is keeping your mindset and your priorities positive leads to a positive outcome.
Absolutely, and I think that's kind of one of the natural things that always comes to discussion with all business-minded people is that positive mindset. And it can be difficult at times, but if you look at all the successful people out there, it's really important as an entrepreneur, business person, anybody really, at the end of the day, to look at the most successful people in the areas that you want to be successful in. And hopefully you all want to be successful in something, whether it even be a stay-at-home mom. If that's what you want to do, go do it. But there's critical aspects that all of these successful people have there's a common theme for all of them, and positive thought, and then the 5-hour rule, and follow through and integrity. Those are pretty much it. But the 5-hour rule is something that's been unspoken. People are starting to talk about it more. It was Malcolm Gladwell. He's talked about the 10,000 hour breakthrough, and that's when you're an expert in something. And the cheat to that, instead of doing 10,000 hours, the real truth behind that is 5 hours a week of learning, of improving your sense of your positioning, improving your knowledge base, improving on your situation psychologically. And when you're reflecting on anything that you've read, write this stuff down. That's really important. At no point in time would I recommend reading a book without taking time to write in the margins, write notes in a spiral notebook, something. You should be writing this stuff down. I think it's really important, so that way you can go back and reflect on what you read. And again, experimenting. If you're not experimenting, you're not finding new things to disrupt. You're not finding new things that can kind of push the limits of yourself first and what other people are offering. Because if you're offering something that's brand new, you're experimenting, trying new things, who knows? Maybe you can bring the price on something up and take notes on that, reflect, and find out that people were willing to pay the price, but only if you did X, Y, and Z, and that's a learning process. And I don't think you can really do that appropriately without taking the time to read books like the ones that we just shared and reflecting on the experiments that you put out.
And also reflect on the knowledge base that you get. That is, one thing I do is I like to set 30 minutes aside a day to at least listen to part of an audiobook or work on the one that I'm working on now. And I'll talk about that one when I get done with it. And then going to the gym, like that's my reflection time. Like meditation can be music, it can be actually listening to a meditation tape. Anywhere you find yourself at peace can be your meditation, right? And a lot of people don't understand that. Like when I'm focused at the gym, like recently I took my own advice and I was like, look, there's mental constructs in your head that you have to break. And apparently, according to Adam Rorta, I've gotten chubby since he's known me. So I have taken my
Hey, listen, I was not fat shaming you. I was giving you a hard time as a friend. You can look however you want.
So but then I was looking at it, right? And I was looking at it and I started dissecting the issue. And I was like, look, I have some stuff in my life going on, and is that an excuse? No, but I've used it as an excuse and I'll use it as a crutch. I'm going to admit that here. So with that being said, as a person that has broke down a lot of mental constructs in my head when people have told me no, because for every 1,000 no's, there's a one yes, right? As long as you keep knocking on doors, someone's eventually going to say yes, right? It's quantumly, it's 1,000,000 to 1 chance that someone will tell you no, right? So I'm going to apply that to my thinking now. Is I broke that mental construct on a lot of things. Like when people told me I couldn't build a website company, and I did it, right? And people told me that I wasn't going to be able to land a website contract. Look, I did it. And with that being said, landing the mental construct of losing weight, I did it before when I joined the Army, and I did it. I recently started doing it again within the last month. I've eaten healthier. I have lost close to 20 pounds, getting very close to losing 20 pounds. I'm at 182. I'm hoping to jump down to 175. And I weighed almost 200 pounds. I was 195 when I went to the VA, and the doctor looked at me, right? And this is a few days where Adam looks at me and goes, dude, you're chubby and you're fixing to be obese, right? And even the doctor told me that. And I'm sitting here like, wow.
Well, I wouldn't have said that if I wasn't a close friend, and if I didn't know that was going to push you in the right direction. But
I don't consider it fat shaming, because in the way you said it, you did it with care. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, so even then, I recommend most people don't do that to somebody. You can upset them, but like John and I, we have kind of this kind of relationship where we can give each other a hard time.
You should never walk up to somebody in public and be like, "Bro, you're fucking fat." Like, don't do that. That's rude as fuck. But with this being said, like breaking those mental constructs and meditating on it, right? And I sat down and I thought, okay, look, I need to start eating healthier. I went to Whole Foods, I bought a whole bunch of spinach, got some chicken, rice, and some other things to keep myself going, right? And I started breaking down, like, I picked, like, who is someone I idolize in Hollywood, right? Ryan Reynolds. I know it sounds crazy as hell for Ryan Reynolds. He looks good as an individual. Who do I want to look like and get buff? So I found out Ryan Reynolds actually had a workout plan that got put out on the internet, and I got the PDF for it. So I downloaded that, and I've literally been dropping weight like nobody's business. With that being said, when I mean nobody's business, I'm dropping like a pound or two a week. That's what's right. That's
now
what's
you're doing well.
Right? So with that being said, I broke that mental construct of me telling myself, I'll do it tomorrow, and then seeing that I put it off, it was really bothering me, putting stuff like that off. So with that being said, I'm pushing myself to the furthest extent that I can, and meditating on that allowed me to break that mental construct.
Right. Well, and we've got to take time to reflect and hear what people tell us, so that way we're learning. And I think that's kind of what you've been getting at is, part of your 5-hour rule is every week you got to take some time to sit back and hear those things that you don't want to hear, and hopefully you're writing these things down and crossing them off if either A, it doesn't really matter, or B, this could actually help me out. Take some time to reflect on it and figure it out. You don't have to be super offended when people tell you, listen, we've been through something here doing a pitch on a project, and we were really upset about things, but guess what? I turned around and I utilized what that person had to say, and I can see improvements already, and it's helped me out in different areas, but it hit close enough to home that I was able to utilize it and now improve on the things that I'm doing. So that reflection aspect is probably one of the most critical parts of the 5-hour rule, but the experimenting too is something I think most people forget about. The reading, you hear it a lot. Oprah had her book club, still has it, I think still exists, but there's all these reading lists that everybody's putting out. That's really important, but we all know that. What about the experimenting part? I think that's one part that a lot of people leave out, John, and it's really critical in my mind to spend at least a few hours every week taking time and trying to create something new, a new idea, and running with it and presenting it to people and seeing what kind of response I get, doing surveying and giving them different ideas that I had come up with and getting feedback and reflecting on it. Again, reflection is really critical, but I wouldn't know half the stuff that I do in the Bitcoin world because it's so young without actually experimenting and seeing what kind of feedback I get from people. And sure enough, the Bitcoin world is actually bringing me more money and more opportunities and more potential for making money than any other industry I've ever been in, not just because of its ability to move up and down in volatility, because what I do has nothing to do with it, but instead I'm able to present. I just grasped onto the idea of experimenting with all the people, putting the market research out, seeing and feeling what information they were able to put out there, and pull it back and use my experience from everything else, reflect on it, and understand that this market has its own learning curve to go through, and I'm going through it with the market. And it's amazing. I was able to see that my experimenting is actually turning into something much bigger, and I'm able to consult to these major institutions. We're talking top 10 banks that I'm consulting to right now, and there's things that people would not be able to do, including myself, without taking that step of just experimenting. Some of it felt crazy at first when I was dealing with it.
I'll take this a step further. Project. A lot of people leave after you experiment. Project yourself where you want to go. If it is to be financially free from the burdens of life, then okay. If it is to make enough money to take care of your mom and dad and retire them early, project yourself into the future where you want to be in the next 4, 5, 10 years, and try to have those goals happen. And I think it's what a lot of people lose out on, is not projecting in the right goals in the right mind frame.
Definitely. Well, on that note, I think we covered quite a bit today. Definitely give us a like, a share, and a comment if you would. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. I apologize to you, John, if I kind of took over, but I know I threw the 5-hour rule concept at you, so I knew it kind of be good to push on that.
Even though this is a short podcast, I think we've given enough information for you to go look at these books, check them out, and try to get yourself more mentally prepared for the halt and the grind. I mean, every title that we've picked so far has been specifically targeted to entrepreneurs. So please don't give up on your goals and dreams. Push forward, don't give up. And that's it. We'll talk to you later. This has been Johnny Langford with Savage Podcast and Adam Roy. We'll talk to you later.